Purple.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Yeah, like, wrap it up.
I think that's Nebraska. I don't know. I don't know all the states.
You're correct. It's Nebraska.
Okay, good. We're right. All right. How can we help you today, Purple?
So, first thing is the tiny comment to Miss Yvette is the alphabet always seems to get me. The getting Penelope first, totally fine, but it's always that alphabet that gets me. So, secondly, basically my question feels complicated, but I have a feeling it's just because I'm not really like well versed in all this in like terminology and identification and things like that. I'm a cis man, and so a lot of it's just still very foreign to me. My main question it really has to do with what, and this feels like a really Googleable question, but I feel like it's not. What exactly is I guess gender, I understand gender expression, gender identity kind of confuses me. I understand obviously the difference between, that there is a difference between sex and gender, but I have a hard time pinning down what specifically it is. And the reason I say it's not not like an easily Googleable question is because I really feel like it's not something like you can scientifically test for easily. It's a very personal kind of thing, but I think there would be, I would at least hope there would be some kind of an answer that could be reasonably conveyed to someone who maybe doesn't have that same experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could jump in, but I do want to make sure we give Yvette some time here as well, since we were talking about sex and gender at the beginning of the show.
You might have the terminology down better than me, because this is one that I'm like, all right, I believe sex is the genitals, and I believe that gender is the how you're is the what you eternally feel like, and I don't want to fuck that one up. So you might have better vocabulary than I do, and I always feel like I'm going to fuck up the vocab, and I never want to. And so I'm going to defer to someone who definitely has, is clearly explaining this stuff way better than I am. So go on.
I feel you. I just did a stream on body positivity, and I'm like, I don't know any of the terms. Like, I hope I'm not offending people by accident here.
Yeah, it's both the body positivity ones are hard.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just said body positivity conversations are hard, and I write about diets for a living. And there's like, I put a pic. It's just on the body positivity thing. I posted a before after of me from weight loss, and I got emails saying that I was being antibody positive. So that one's a landmine, or a minefield. That's what I meant to say. See, words not working for me right now. But yeah, it's
all right.
So.
Well, I mean, this is V, please go ahead.
So I do want to I think I want to frame this in a way that I've been thinking about it recently. And again, words, who knows? But here's how I see it. So have you done like a 23andMe kind of DNA test ever, Purple? Like, do you know kind of the makeup genetically of what you are geographically?
I know half of it. My dad did one.
Okay, cool. So, let's say I grew up thinking that I was 60% Italian, 40% German. Turns out I'm not German at all. I did one of those, blew my mind. I was like, what is this? I built my identity around being German. But so for me, gender's a lot like that. There are physical components, right? I can say I am 10% Irish, and I'm also 10% of Middle Eastern descent. And because 23andMe is built by white people, the concept of any, geographical areas outside of Western Europe is very vague. So they didn't give me specifics, but apparently I am as Middle Eastern as I am Irish. Now that's my genetic makeup. That is who I am as a person. And now I get to choose what my identity is, right? Now I get to choose, what am I going to identify with? What part of my my culture. Which culture am I going to pick? How am I going to dive into this? And for me, a lot of even before I knew I was Irish at all, I loved Irish history. I loved Irish mythology. I loved Irish music. So when I think about myself, I like to think about that 10% of myself, which is Irish, and all of the rest is like, yeah, also there's that, and I like that I'm all of this, but like I'm picking this 10% and I'm making this my identity. Yes, there's genetic backing to it. Yes, we can talk about what it means to be Irish genetically, and as far as demographics go and all of that. But socially, for myself, from an identity point of view, I have an Irish penny whistle. Is that going to be in my DNA code? No, but that's part of my identity. That's who I am. That's what I choose. And so for me, in the same way that a lot of the time we construct artificially concepts around race, concepts around geography and what it means to be of certain descent, we are also constructing things about gender and what gender means and what it means to be of this, persuasion or that persuasion. So for me, yes, there's always going to be a biological component. There's always going to be a physiological component, a neurological component. But when we talk about identity, we're talking about what culture we're growing up in, what culture we're choosing as our own, what culture is saying about us to us. And all of that and where we situate ourselves in that is what identity is. So for me, I'm a non-binary person. And who knows if that has something to do with my hormones or my chromosomes. I've never been tested. I don't know. What I do know is that I know where I exist in the culture. I know what culture says about me. I know what people say to me. I know where I can find community. And all of that combined is what makes me choose an identity in being non-binary. And so for me, that's kind of the most straightforward way I can put it without knowing any of like the hard science behind it. Yes, gender is a construct. Race is also a construct. Yes, there are genetic things that play into both. But when we're talking about what identity is, it's what we choose to be and what we've been given by our cultures.
Okay.
If I can give a parallel to one thing, I'm genetically Jewish, but I'm culturally an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So I guess the main reason that like I bring it up in that way is because, and it's not necessarily about making things easier for like everybody else, but I feel like it feels like there are easier ways to approach some of this. And I guess the thought that has always come to my mind, and I really want to know maybe what part of it makes you bristle a little bit, because I get the feeling it's going to make somebody bristle, and I want to make sure I'm kind of couching that. But I guess to me, when it comes to the, phrasing, like he, him pronouns, they, them pronouns, all of that, I always honor what people tell me they want to be called. And I have no problem with that. With a name like Purple, I really have a leg to stand on. But so the main thing is I'm trying to understand, like, if we simply made, if we tied male to only genetics, kind of like what we do, and I don't mean to like trivialize people, but kind of like what we do with animals. We don't give animals a gender. To me, it feels like it would be simply easier to do away with as much as possible gender norms, so to speak, and kind of gender expectations than it would be to try to kind of allow people more or less to identify with whatever gender, just kind of in a perfect world kind of scenario, gender just wouldn't, like, men could wear dresses, women could wear
Purple, are you a gender abolitionist?
Yeah,
What is this turn of events?
Right. I'm wondering, first and foremost, if you saw the first half of the show where we kind of pointed out that genetics are not that simple. So I think that's a really important piece to remember here, is that our genetics are not straightforward or straight down the middle in that kind of way. But the more important reality is that we don't get to, like, Sim City construct our society from scratch. And while there's a lot of value in, getting away from like, why does everything have to be gendered, and recognizing some of the difficulty and the messiness of some of these constructs. These constructs grew up under duress. Our understanding of gender is a function of a lot of revisionist history. It's a function of a lot of oppression. It's a function of a lot of people just kind of toiling around in the darkness trying to understand these things. The idea that we are beginning to have any type of like genetic research into things like gender identity and sexuality is kind of new in a lot of ways. The idea that a university would actually dedicate a research wing to any of this is really important and exciting, but it's new. So yeah, a lot of these constructs are really messy, and we kind of need to be willing to work within them, even as we want to maybe expand and change some of these ideas through that scholastic infighting and sort of that cultural Darwinism, as like new ideas come up and other ideas replace them, and all of this. I think we need to accept and acknowledge that people have been working very hard in a lot of different ways culturally to give us what limited cultural technology and verbiage and whatever else we currently have, and to be maybe mindful about dismissing that.
Well, and I guess so. You're absolutely right. A lot of it's very new, and I don't mean to like present this kind of weird pie in the sky genetic abolition gender abolitionist kind of position. And quite frankly, I generally don't get nervous, but I am kind of parsing my words poorly here. But the example that I always kind of give is, it's easier to get people to accept that anyone can wear pants than it is to get people to accept that this specific gendered person, this we'll say woman for the sake of the conversation, this woman wants to wear pants. If we go back to 100 years ago, a woman wanting to wear pants was absurd, but it's easier to get people to accept that a woman wants to wear pants than this woman is in fact not a woman, and her entire genetic and chromosomal makeup is just somehow not what she really is. Like in my head, it's just easier to get people to accept, no, women can wear pants, than it is to accept that this person that presents genetically in every other every other forward-facing way presents feminine is actually a man. That's the part that confuses me, and that's the part where I say it would just be easier to give people a male or female label based on their sex, and then just say that, yeah, women can wear pants, men can wear dresses and makeup and do whatever they want, like all that kind of stuff. Just seems like an easier way to go, because we've done a lot of that already in allowing men, to be a little bit more girly recently, and allowing women to be tomboys and such. Like that's
yeah.
The example.
I
hear that
where you're coming from, Purple. And to me, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like I don't see color. And I'm sorry to keep moving it back into the area of discussions about race, because why not make this more volatile and confusing? But no, the whole thing here is, I think right now we are in an area where people are saying the things they used to say about people of various races and cultures. They're now saying about people of different, I just don't see gender. I just don't care what you call yourself. Why don't we just have one label that everybody goes by? And that's a step forward. Yeah. And that's cool that's like where we are now in the conversation, because that is progress. But I would say that in the same way we realized that I don't see color was actually, let's pretend it doesn't exist and not be offended by it and try and homogenize it. Instead, what we should be doing is finding ways to celebrate the diversity that humans offer just naturally. I think we should be doing the same with gender. And so, yes, on one level, I see where you're coming from. And honestly, there are very many queer people who have been gender abolitionists and who have said gender is oppressive. We don't need it. Get rid of it. And there are points to be made there. But for me, what I'm saying is, I find happiness in my gender. I find joy in it. I don't struggle in my non-binary identity. I struggle because the rest of the world doesn't accept me. But personally, when I'm by myself, I love who I am and I love playing with gender. I'm trying to get up to $350 a month on Patreon. And when I get there, I'm doing a live stream where I dress in drag and do lip sync, and all my patrons get to meet my drag persona. And that's going to be so much fun, and I'm so excited about that. It's a space to play. So for me, I would go in the opposite direction and say that instead of saying we don't need it, get rid of it, say everybody gets to choose. And here's the thing. There is this talking point that a lot of gender critical people and trans exclusionary radical feminists have been putting out there, that trans people and NB people are denying the reality of sex, which certainly is not the case. Nobody's saying that male and female don't exist. Nobody is saying that the biology doesn't exist. What we're saying is we need to radically shift the way we're thinking about it. So when you're talking with somebody about their gender identity, really their genetic makeup, their biology shouldn't factor into that conversation. Like Yvette said at the beginning, when you look at someone and you make an assumption about their gender, you're not looking at their chromosomes. And chances are they haven't looked at their chromosomes either. So,
and their chromosomes are more complicated than that. We can't break people down into just two categories because those categories don't exist.
Right. So there's a lot to unpack here, and we're already a little over time. Yeah, I got very excited about this call, but that's a good question. And I think we got to some really interesting conclusions tonight.
No, absolutely, and I definitely don't want to take any more of your time. I certainly hope that nothing I said came off as negative in any way. It certainly wasn't meant to be, and quite frankly, you and Miss Yvette and Mr. Christie are all incredibly helpful, and that's exactly the kind of insight that I was going for, because like I said, I have not had that experience, so that is exactly what I'm after. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks for asking the hard questions and putting yourself out there. That's all we ask, and you're doing great.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a nice night.
Take care.
I feel like I talked a lot tonight. I apologize.
No, not at all. I just want to lay it out that some people...
Great.
Yeah, well, and to take all of that and distill it again, like gender, or rather sex, is not an either or checkbox. It is a bimodal distribution. If you're not familiar with what that picture looks like, look it up or find links to it in the show notes to this episode. And also, yeah, gender is beautiful. I wouldn't want to get rid of it, even as my gender can be fluid and a little bit confusing, not necessarily to, well, yeah, a little bit to me, but mostly to my parents and to other people. Even as it's confusing, it's a beautiful thing and worth embracing.